Okay, let's get started. Thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Brian Israel, and I am the chair of an organization called Friends of Israel's Environment, which is a US-based organization that supports Adam Teva V'Din. And we're going to learn a lot about Adam Teva V'Din, and Tammy will give a little bit more detail in just a moment. And we are so happy that everyone is here today on a Sunday evening, afternoon, or morning, depending on where you're calling from. And as you know, we'll be talking a little bit about the environmental implications of the war in Gaza and the attacks in Israel on October 7th. Want to acknowledge at the outset that it's talking about the environmental implications. In no way are we want to acknowledge the very real and ongoing personal and national and security traumas that continue, and we don't want to forget the very difficult situation that continues. But we also want to bring our attention to some of the important environmental issues that are affecting both nature and people's lives in a very real way. And that's what we'll be talking about today. So with that, I want to introduce our panel, our esteemed panel. So first, I'll start with Galit. Galit Cohen is at the Institute INNS, which is the Institute for National Security Studies. Did I get that correct? Affiliated with Tel Aviv University. And Galit is the director of the program on climate change at INSS. And in a minute, I'll ask Galit just to give us a brief overview of INSS. But my understanding is the INSS was founded after the Yom Kippur War and is an independent think tank that looks at a wide variety of security and strategic issues for Israel. Prior to joining INSS, Galit was the Director General of the Israel Ministry of Environmental Protection, with the leading, most senior regulator for environmental issues in Israel. It has a very long and notable career in the environmental arena. Galit, before I introduce Tammy, could you just give us a quick overview of what INS is and what they're doing?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, the INSS really founded after the Yom Kippur War to make sure that there is an independent institute that will provide information and research and views outside of the military and defense institutions, state one. And so all the years, there is a lot of course, researchers that, research all the issues of security, defense. In the last, I think it's already 3 years, started to deal also with the climate issues. So invent the climate program at the INSS. I just joined a year before. Just a year before. So when I finished my duty, let's say, in the Ministry of Environmental Protection after 23 years that I was there. Yes, my last position was as a Director General. Before I was Deputy Director General for Policy Planning Strategy, and for 11 years. And so most of my career is on the ministry. And so what I'm trying to do is to deal now in the INSS to deal with the connections, and there is a lot, we'll speak about it, between security issues and climate and environmental issues. And just to say the least, that I always say that whenever you are dealing and adapting the challenges of the climate challenges and environmental challenges, the challenges well, then you will also be ready for security challenges. So that's my mission there.
Super. Well, we're so happy that you were able to join us, Galit. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce my very good friend Tammy Ganot, who is the Deputy Executive Director of Adam Tov Vadin. And I've had the personal pleasure and privilege to work with Tammy for many years. And Tammy has over many years worked on numerous issues at Adam Tov Vadin, including marine management, climate change, policy, and strategy. And Tammy, we're thrilled that you're here. Maybe you could just give us a quick introduction of Adam Tov Vadin.
I'm thrilled to be here. I think that's one of the most important nexus that need to be addressed between security and national strategy and climate and environment, because it's all about how we live, how long we live. It's really about the most important questions of life. And thank you so much for the introduction, Brian. So yes, I'm a lawyer, and I've been working for many years with Adam Teva Vadin, which is one of Israel's largest and oldest environmental advocacy NGOs. With the professional team, we have over 30 years of experience with the professional team of lawyers and scientists, all working together on various environmental issues. And we use basically very much inspired by organizations in the US, such as NRDC. We use our very diverse toolbox of lawyers and scientists, economists, urban planners, etc., to address the issues in a multifaceted way. We go to court, either against the government or polluters. We draft legislation. We work on policy papers, on getting information together. We work with municipalities and with stakeholders of all kinds. And we have been very proud to say part of Israel's current environmental legal corpus, both in courts and outside of courts. And over the past few years, we have been focused also a lot about climate change as it impacts and is impacted by all other environmental issues, and is an umbrella issue in its own.
Thank you. I know in these days,
Brian,
yes,
can I say something about Adam Tov Vadin?
of course.
As someone who collaborate outside, we were there was a time that I can call Tammy and tell her, look, there is a problem in the government, you should do something, you should take the government to the court and something like that. So I just want to mention how it is so important, the role of the Adam Tov Vadin in the in the environmental community, in the civil society community, in the environmental arena. So important. They have so important role. I can tell you that there is some laws and some regulations that without the Adam Tov Vadin, we won't have it at all. Starting with the Clean Air Act and continue with a lot of, and also the some corrections of the laws, like the חוק הפיקדון.
Bottle to deposit law, the containers deposit
Plastic,
law.
yes.
Yeah, the
yes.
containers. Yeah, the bottle, the large one. It's
Yes.
also the decision by the end. It was just because of the Adam Tov Vadin took the government to the court. So there is. I always told to the ministers that the role of Adam Tov Vadin and all the other NGOs, of the environmental NGOs, is very, very important. Even though they are, criticizing us or taking us to the court, we have to take it as something from love. And so improving the environment in Israel, even so now it's very hard for you. So just
It's wonderful. So I'm so glad you said
it.
And we didn't, just so our audience is aware, we did not pay Galit to say that, and I didn't even know you would say that. So thank you very much. And it is a unique.
Really, Galit is donating from her time and her very busy schedule to be here with us, and we greatly appreciate it.
And I will tell you from the American perspective, it is very unique, the relationship between Adam Tov Vadin and the Israeli government that there is such a respect for an NGO. It's much more adversarial in the U.S. So in many cases. So thank you for those comments. And in these days when we're all looking for inspiration to be able to spend time with the two of you is inspiring, and your respective organizations. And I encourage people to go to either website, inss.org.il or adamteva.org.il, if you want to learn more about either organization. And if we have time at the end, maybe we'll go back to the two organizations and talk about your priorities for the rest of the year. So let's go to the topic of the day and of this webinar. And again, acknowledging this is day 261 since October 7th, and we have many people and families and loved ones who are in harm's way, and we pray for security and peace and in the days ahead. And so with that, I'd like to turn to environmental issues and war, and ask both of you from your perspectives, both in Israel and in Gaza, what do we understand are some of the most pressing and important environmental issues when we have a situation like we're dealing with in Israel and in Gaza?
Well,
Yeah.
I'll start in very generally, and Galit, maybe you'd like to elaborate on some of the issues. The war, other than its initial catastrophic impacts that you just mentioned, Brian, that are felt all around from all impacted communities, has a very, very, very grave environmental and climate toll. And it has many levels and many different issues. And the thing about an ongoing war is it creates more and more environmental catastrophes, while it diminishes the opportunities we have to deal with them. So we're talking now about the day after and how to look forward, but we have to acknowledge that for the time being, it's still very, very hard to find the opportunity to address some of the issues that we're going to talk about. However, when we do address them, and we'll probably dive into this later, there are also opportunities. So very largely saying there are a few families of impacts that need to be addressed. I think over recent days, especially, we have witnessed the raging wildfires on the northern, because we've been talking about the southern border and the war there, but there's also attacks of the war going on the north of Israel, and there have been wildfires all around with very little opportunities to control them. It's very, very limited resources to control them. So thousands of acres have been burned down. We are talking about, of course, and this is also, you can see it in your eyes and all pictures that we see from the war, from war zones. There is a huge amount of waste, building waste, very diverse materials waste, a lot of warfare, all mixed together with huge like mountains of waste, creating also dust and air pollution. We'll cover it soon. There is a huge risk and actual marine and river pollution from untreated sewage from Gaza that is going into the sea, and because environment knows no border, raw sewage from Gaza reaches also desalination plants in Ashkelon, a desalination plant that provides nearly 30% of Israel's drinking water. There's underground water and land contamination from weapons, but also from overuse of the underground water, and because the sewage treatment facilities are not getting the the fuel and the resources they need, so they're basically inactive, and therefore there's a contamination of underground water and land. We need to say at this point that already the aquifer, the main water source in Gaza, 96.2% of it has been deemed by the UN committee as unsafe for drinking before the war, and things have only worsened since. There is, of course, a huge damage to nature, and again, from various issues, destruction of natural habitats, changes to migration routes, light pollution, noise pollution, invasive species surge, stray dogs, pests, diseases, everything together in a very uncontrolled situation. I mentioned briefly air pollution from the waste issues and particulate matter. Maybe interesting to note that following the outbreak of the conflict, there was a sharp increase in air pollution in the Gaza envelope, the Tcumar region. I think we're going to talk about what it means, the Tcumar region, soon. There was a 25% rise in the concentration of PM, particulate matter, in the air. PM 2.5 microns, which is the type that was measured, is a significant health risk and a significant risk to respiratory systems, and it's associated with premature death. There are also public health risks from all of the above. I mean, we've mentioned pests and diseases, etc., but also from asbestos building that was still used in the areas, and from indoor air pollution, from metals, from batteries being burned to the ground. And in this case, I'm going to say, like in brackets, that there's no protocol in place to ascertain that people return to safe homes from a contamination perspective, not just from a security perspective. There's an issue of hazardous chemicals. There's thousands of facilities in Israel holding hazardous materials, many of them located near densely populated areas. There are approximately 3.2 million residents of Israel currently residing in areas that are in a real health risk because of incidents, including hazardous materials, which of course the risk is higher during times of war. And all that we mentioned is a part of the of climate risks, and climate risks are also risks to the climate, emissions from the wildfires we mentioned, from elimination of natural carbon sinks, from warfare, but also from the risks of climate change that pose to soldiers, hostages, communities that don't have access now to air conditioning, enough water, etc., with the very, very dramatic heat waves in the area. And I will also say that there's another impact that's a bit more down the line of the shipping routes that have been using the Red Sea, but now under the Houthi terrorist attack, they're choosing to bypass and the danger zone. That's adding about an average of 15 days of sailing, of cargo sailing for ships for the trip, which means, of course, a lot more greenhouse gas pollution. And finally, I will also say that all this is on the side. We have logistics related impact with a lot of the personnel in ministries like the Ministry for Environmental Protection or the Natural Parks Authority. A lot of the personnel, hundreds of people, are in active reserve service. There is less enforcement. There are areas that cannot be approached and cannot be dealt with. And there's threats, constant threats on services such as waste collection. And all this is amplified, of course, like I said, by climate and by issues. So this is really just to get a taste of the hazards we're facing.
Galit. Thank you, Tammy. That's very upsetting. But we're gonna move to some of the recovery opportunities as well in a minute. But Galit, other implications.
No, I think that Tammy just covered everything. Just to say that the impact, the environmental impact from that's happened in Gaza is not staying in Gaza, it's moving to Israel. And also for our soldiers that inside Gaza, there is a lot of diseases and the waste and wastewater and sewage all around, and of course it affects them also. So it's also moving from Gaza to the Gaza envelope, the Israeli area, and also by our soldiers getting out and outside, inside, outside is also. But I think that Tammy just covered everything, and let's move for something.
Well, maybe Galit, could you address? So I think Tammy, went through a lot of the physical impacts from the war. I'm sure you're very aware, very focused as well on some of the political impacts, both within Israel, regionally, globally, from the war, from an environmental perspective. Maybe Galit, you could.
Yeah. So just to say that concerns about the environment and climate change are rarely at the top of the agenda at Israel. So it's not, but the things have gotten worse during the last year. So before it was and then the war. So it's not easy to put the environmental and climate issues on top of the agenda, the public agenda, the government agenda. So what we saw from the beginning of the war, it's that the environment and climate issues are not on the table, and there is no improvement. And even worse, as I said, it's just we saw the cutting the budget for the climate. The government eliminate the budget for climate change as a whole. Especially, I will speak about the supporting the local authorities and the industries on renewable energy and improving renewable energy and energy efficiency. So there is no support, there is no budget for this, there is no budget for preparing the adaptation plans in the local authorities, and of course not for implement those plans like river rehabilitation and shadow inside by trees inside the cities, which is so important issues, and especially now, and especially that the climate change phenomenon, the impact is already here, and we face so many heat waves during this summer. We knew it before because the Israeli Meteorological Institute Authority, they said that from the beginning of June until the end of October, we will face about twice, even 3 times a month, those heat waves, which is very, very dangerous for elderly people. So from one hand, we saw really cutting. There is no improvement of the climate law, even though I know that Tammy will say, well, it's not so good, so maybe it's better not to improve it and not to continue with this, let's say, version. But I think that it's important, and it's important that we have a law, a climate law, and it's so important that we will have goals in the laws and not just a governmental decision like we have now. Our NDCs, as you know, is already not so not so motivated, let's say. And also we don't have yet the carbon tax. So the carbon pricing is also not improving in Israel. So there is no, motivation, not from the both side, not from a stick and not from the carrot. No carrot, no stick, there is nothing. So it is, you can see that there is no tension for these issues. But I want to say something. There is some lights, there is a light. And yes, this government, a few months ago, I think 2 or 3 months ago, they approved the permit, the integrated permit law, which we worked for this for a few years. So I'm happy for that. That's going to improve the industry environmental performance and to meet the BREFs, the EU BREFs of the environmental performance, and also implementing innovative technologies. So at least for the this issue, we can say, yes, congratulations for Israel. We have a new law, very, very important one, and very progressive. So there is something. I want to end with a positive issue. Still, we have a long, long way, and I hope that maybe from, not from Ahavat Mordechai, from Sinat Haman, to say not from a positive, let's say, motivation to pass the carbon tax, because they really need the money for the budget, the governmental budget. So probably, I hope that they will finally pass it and we'll have a carbon tax.
What about and just one further question on kind of continuing to step higher and higher levels, on the cooperation with regional partners, for instance, on clean water and clean energy and global initiatives. How is the war and the sort of a lot of the negative attention on Israel? How are all these things affecting environmental policies from y'all's perspective?
Yeah, it's hard. Let's start with the regional one. So if we also at the INSS worked on the Prosperity project, which is the Israel will import the renewable energy from Jordan, and we will export desalinated water to Jordan. And we did a work, and there was a lot of planning, and they should, sign by November, last November in Dubai, this COP, to sign this agreement and then continue. And Israel is supposed to publish a tender and so on to build this desalination plant in Emek Hefer for 200 million cubic meter a year for Jordan. And by the beginning of the war, we got information to stop to work on this project because they don't want to work on it. And there is no continuation between the both sides, even though Israel is still continuing to plan this. I think that there is no other way that Jordan will meet the water scarcity that they have now without this adding this water from Israel. There is, yes, the Minister of Energy and Water signed to for another half a year an agreement to continue with the agreement of adding 55 million cubic meter a year to Jordan to add from the peace agreement. By the peace agreement between Israel and Jordan, we are selling to Jordan about 50 million cubic meter a year. 3 or 4 years ago already, by I think 3 years ago, by Bennett, when he was the prime minister, we signed agreement that we will sell them another 55 million cubic meter a year. So it's about 105 million cubic meter a year. And and this agreement were ended by May 2024. So Israel, in spite of the war, in spite of everything, decided to continue with this agreement for another half a year. I think that it's going also to continue even more. So the understanding of needing each other in this area is here. We do understand that we need each other. Israel has a lot of interest, security interest in Jordan. Jordan have also a security interest, but also water interest. We have to collaborate together. I think that what we saw in the security issues, that there is a lot of collaboration. Jordan, Israel, UAE, Egypt, we collaborate together. What we saw in the evening of the midnight of the 13th of April, when you got all those missiles and so on from Iran, we saw what does it mean to collaborate in this area and how we depend on each other. So I think that it's also about environmental issues, even though that now there is no really open collaboration and, discussion and so on environmental issues. But whenever we will decide that there is a collaboration and we can collaborate, I think that the environmental and climate issues could contribute to this collaboration, to bring the positive sides from both sides.
Yep.
And, to contribute to the stabilization of this area.
Yes.
It was also
you
a
very
part of the Abraham Accords, the collaborating on climate issues with the other countries.
Yep. Anything else, Tammy, you want to add to what Galit said?
Well, I'll say, first of all, from a very NGO perspective, working with governments and decision makers, that we have also experienced sort of a backlash with the attention to climate change because of the identification the global climate movement had initially with Hamas, with anti-Israel, and a few very unfortunate mentions, and I think have sort of matured into a situation where we can understand the complexities and still talk about climate and to talk about it seriously, recognizing the situation that we are here. But it's definitely been a challenge because of the backlash of the decision makers in Israel. Were even more opposed, not just indifferent to climate issues. And there's a lot of work being done on that. I would like to address, to go a bit backwards, and you talked with Galit and about the political issues, and I think Galit described very well how there's lack of attention and then there's a seizing of budgets that's needed. And I just wanted to mention that we saw, in light of the need for more budgets for the war, that there were across the board cuts from budgeted, gravely needed by one of the most underserved communities in Israel, from a series of government resolutions that were meant to close the gap between Arab communities and general population in Israel, in a number of issues, including environmental issues such as waste management, etc. And the budgets were cut dramatically in a way that really harms the whole attempt. And I can even give an example, not an environmental example, but just recently, even the assistance phone services that the Ministry for Equity and Equality in Israel shut down the assistance that they provided in Arab to Arab communities in Arabic, was shut down because of budgets. So we can see not only that budgets are taken from environmental needs and urgent environmental needs, and again that Galit went over very well, they're taken also from the communities that need them the most, and it will be very hard to fix later on.
Okay, so let's pivot. We're from the very real physical and political and global implications, adverse implications from war in general, and this war in specific, on environmental issues. And let's talk a little bit about, so as Galit said, the light and some of the opportunities and some of the positive things that we see and hope for. And I'd like, maybe Tammy, you could, before we begin, I know that in this conversation, our folks may hear the word tekuma, and I just so I think that's a word that's familiar in Israel, but maybe less so in the United States. So perhaps you can just explain to us the meaning of this word as well as what it means in the current context.
Okay, I'll try. Well, the word itself, kuma, means building back, rising up after something horrible has happened to you. So this is I'm not sure that there is one word in English that describes it exactly, but this is the essence of it. It's rising up again, and it's a name of a village, a town in the southern area. But in our context, it is the name of the administrative area, which is basically the Gaza envelope. It's like the area of about 7 kilometers, I think, around the border with Gaza, from the Israeli side, of the communities and villages and towns that were most highly impacted. And the government has built an administration and is trying to pass a law to help them build back quicker, faster, remediate the situation, and to be able to come back and live it up from various aspects, not just the environmental. The environmental is actually only one of the issues there. And we at Adam Teva V'Din have worked together. We gathered our professionals from the various fields of expertise, and we basically put together a document with a list of recommendations how to, and again taking from the US, how to build back better in a sustainable way, how to use this. I wouldn't say use this as an opportunity, but at least when we are looking, we're not just looking to build back the building that was destructed by a missile, but we're looking to build the communities in a way that can allow them to thrive, especially in a changing climate, and to build something more resilient, more successful, more thriving, a place that it's better to live there than it was. And so we basically put together these recommendations, which are all from a perspective of putting in place economic and environmental drivers that will help strengthen the economy and the communities. They're not just the environment. To look at it from a win-win-win bottom line, and to see how we can work with what we have in the current situation in the most effective way. And there are recommendations there, for instance, regarding the agriculture, which the area of Tkuma is one of the areas which are sort of like the barns of Israel. They're considered the barns of Israel. It's a huge percentage of Israel's vegetables and fruits and vegetables is from those areas. They're very, very crucial, and they were they're hit very, very hard, and alongside with a lot of extra added difficulties, such as lack of manpower or security issues in coming back to the field. And we have the whole plan available on our website, Brian, which you referred to earlier. But on agriculture, just to sort of give a taste of it, and I'll be happy to elaborate, we're talking about creating a supportive framework for these farmers, of assisting them financially with subsidies, but also supporting them in becoming, getting the acknowledgement of crucial part of Israel's resilience, labeling products from these areas, from impacted areas, giving these areas a product from this produce from these areas preference in government procurement. But we're also talking about using this as a flagship for sustainable agriculture. And research shows that sustainable agriculture is also more beneficial. It demands initial investments, but after those investments are made, it becomes more beneficial, even on a plainly economic sense. So we're talking about energy efficiency and sustainable use of pesticides or herbicides, and of local, buying local, etc. And all this also allows the agriculture to move from being part of the environmental problem to be part of the solution, to be again create more carbon sinks, to create to land management in a better way. So it's hugely important, and it's very crucial for a thriving community there. We also have recommendations regarding energy to build this. This is one of the areas that it makes no sense that is not almost entirely reliant on solar energy. There's a lot of solar in these areas, and we need also local grids to have energy independence. We need to remove barriers for installation and use of renewable energies, etc. And for construction and development, planning and building, the most important thing is engaging with the residents. One of the problems we see right now is the law that the government is trying to push forward very quickly to create a new committee for this area. And in this committee, the residents don't have enough of a place. The Ministry for Environmental Protection doesn't have a place in the committee. The Agriculture Ministry doesn't have a place in the committee. So it's really a fast-track committee, which will be very prone to very narrow interests, and it's very problematic. So one of the most important factors that we're talking about is dialogue with local communities, with stakeholders. We're talking about the reconstructing with the green building principles and putting in place the protocols I mentioned before, make sure people go back to homes that are safe. These are lessons that were learned from the 9/11 disaster. We also have it, I think one of, and I'll end with that just so I won't kind of take over the whole, all of our time here. But I think it's also very important to address the issue of waste, and we talked about it. The waste created by the war is a huge problem, but waste management in Israel in general is at a crisis. We are creating more garbage than the average European. Most of it is going to landfills, very low recycling rates, and we have a very huge waste crisis in Israel. And the idea is first and foremost to treat the construction waste in those areas locally. And instead of transporting construction waste at a cost of 200 shekels per ton, we're talking about bringing in mobile crushers and sifters and reusing the crushed materials for the inner layers of roads and paths, using it already in a sustainable way, in a very circular approach. We're talking about maintaining even now from when we're talking about taking away the garbage from there, separating and sorting into different waste streams so we can treat them accordingly in the most sustainable ways. And the other issue, the last principle, is when we build back, we build back the infrastructure for waste management in the area, establishing an advanced waste treatment system, something that we don't have in most of Israel, but to allow for waste management efficiency, to allow for separation at source in a way that can allow better use of the separate streams, such as using organic waste for compost for the many fields and agricultural sites around, or taking mixed waste for gasification in local treatment facilities, etc. So in this way, we can look forward and build a stronger, more resilient future from the current situation.
Thank you very much. And there's just so many opportunities that you've identified. Galit, where do you see? I'm sure you agree with what Tammy is saying, but maybe you have some additional opportunities or areas where you see there are opportunities for building back better and more sustainably.
Yeah. So I would like to look at the national level and to speak about what is the opportunity for us for more resilience. So in the resilience, we are speaking about energy security, speaking about food security, and also the supply chain security for Israel. So let me just take the energy security issue and to say that now, and there is a lot of, there is the debate now in Israel after the Director General of the Noga company, it's a governmental company that's managing all the electricity in Israel, said that we are not prepared enough for the war, for the next war, and maybe after 72 hours, we cannot even live here in Israel after 72 hours of shutdown, the electricity shutdown in Israel. So what can we do? Well, yes, we do have to improve our electricity grid, but that's going to take a lot of time and a lot of money. But guess what? There is the potential for resolving this very, very difficult situation. The technology, the know-how is already here. So just look about the electricity as not as a decentralized market, and to take the decentralization principle to the electricity and the power generation and so on, and starting to create those facilities like renewable energy inside the cities in the built area, combining with the energy storage, and then the microgrid and microgrid management system inside the cities, inside even each house. And then there is energy security and energy resilience for most of the people in Israel. So we can do it, and we can do it quickly, and we can manage for the next war, whenever it's going to be. And we don't have to wait for a lot of improvement that we should. And we should do this. The improvement of the grid in Israel, the distribution grid, and those very heavy infrastructure. We need this. And I think that if you are looking about Ukraine and other places, even if they don't have the disruption from the war for the electricity, for the energy, the disruption can come from climate change, and the disruption can come from other matters. So we can here in Israel, from our necessity time, to create a solution how to decentralize the system and rely based on renewable energy and energy storage inside the cities as a model for all other places. Because all the places all around the world, all the countries are suffering now from inappropriate, let's say, electrical grid, because all the markets, all the countries moving to electricity, to electrifying the market. So with more and more electrification in the homes, in the industries, in the EV, okay, all those are using more and more electricity. So we need more and more electricity inside the cities. So we don't have this time for this improvement of those very heavy and infrastructure. So we can, from here, create a model for all the countries, and of course, provide for ourselves resilience, energy resilience. So this is only one example, but there is some of those examples that we can, create from these very difficult times, from this necessity at times, solutions.
It's very inspiring. Yeah. Yes, it's quite a literal definition of a light amongst the nations. So if we can create something that's a model that others can follow in terms of decentralization of solar and energy. I want to just capture, we have a number of questions, and I think I'll just capture some of the themes. Clearly, there's an interest from those who are listening to hear a little bit, to the extent you can speak to what we anticipate will happen in the rebuilding of Gaza in terms of environmental issues. And I guess also a related theme in the questions is, we can't solve these problems by ourselves. You have Adam Tevadin has a roadmap of principles, and Galit, what you're talking about is so interesting and important. Who do you anticipate partnering with in order to achieve what is a very ambitious, critically important, urgent, but ambitious agenda?
Well, we started with the government, of course, and with the business sector. In the 5th of June, we had a seminar day conference dealt with the exactly the security of the electricity infrastructure in Israel, and facing, of course, the wartime and what is the effects and how we can prepare. So we brought there all the regulators, the Minister of Energy, and from the other side, the solutions, the technologies. So the private sector in Israel, that they have all the technology, bring it together and say, hey, we can solve it. We have the solutions. Let's do it. But please help us with those challenges, let's say, constraints that we have. So we need you, the government. Please give us your support, and then we can bring the solution. So it's always working together with the private sector and the government to push on those solutions. This is only in one way, in the food security issues. We're also working with the Ministry of Agriculture and the Minister of Agriculture, and from the other side, working with the private sector, with the agricultures and farmers, and also with the food industry also. So always working together.
Amy, you're on mute. If you could unmute your line and then give us.
So I won't speak to myself. No, I was going to say that I absolutely agree with Galit, and I'm going to even say that first and foremost, I think that organizations such as INSS are crucial in shifting the political point of view, because they're talking about climate change not from an environmentalist position, but from a national security position. It's not talking about the idea of climate change and, you know, being part of the world and when fighting it, etc. It's looking the climate crisis in the eye and realizing that if we don't address it, we're going to pay a very huge price. And that if we do address it, it has a lot of other benefits, co-benefits that we can enjoy. And it's, I think, for us, one of the most important instruments to demonstrate that is using economics, is putting the numbers behind the ideas. And I can say, for instance, when you look at the reports and the budget spending and the governmental budget spending, and you can see a report, the spending on various issues, and then there's a sort of a chapter dedicated to climate change. But in that chapter, you see no numbers. All you see is text, ideas. Yes, climate change is important. Yes, it costs a lot. Yes, etc. But there are no numbers there. And until we address the numbers, which are huge, and which are addressed in other places in Europe, etc., and of course, some of the recent legislations, including ESG legislation, are meant to do exactly that. To say, let's stop using the ideology and start talking about the economy, the dollars that are being spent. So I think that is pivotal in understanding it. But it's a long struggle, because it requires to sort of step away of the way people in decision-making capacity have been used to think about it as something that when we have time we'll deal with. And we need to, first of all, create or make that sense of urgency tangible. And I think it's getting there, because, and Galit mentioned when she said, she talked about the attention going away from climate issues, which was never that high, to other issues. But then again, we see a climate law moving forward. And she's right also about how we see this climate law as very, very, very problematic, almost a hoax, using the words climate change with ambitious targets that can be changed very easily, etc. But we can see that it was still important for someone during this time to put forward a law. And it was important, I think, because we do want, I mean, the COP, the conferences of the party for the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change are one of the few clubs that Israel can still be accepted in, but it needs to show action. And I think, therefore, it's a great motivator. And I think we need to use that driver in order to put forward real, good, beneficial legislation.
Yes, thank you. All right, Galit, I'm going to give you the last word because we're almost out of time. But what gives you hope in this moment, this very difficult and challenging moment, looking forward?
The people.
I didn't prepare you for that question, so you have to.
No, I'm ready. The people of Israel. I think that the people of Israel, that by 7th of October, when nothing were prepared for, nothing, the government were not there, not active there. The people of Israel came from this horrible time, said, we will do it. We will recover ourselves. We are not relying on anyone. We will do it. And it is always that there is a tension and we have a mission. We cannot leave ourselves to any other situation. We have to deal with this. We are not giving up for nothing. We will work and we will fight for this very important Israel state. We love it. This is our place, and we will fight for it to be a better place.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful note to end on. And I encourage everyone to go to INS's website, inss.org.il, or Adam Teva Vadin at adamteva.org.il, and to learn more. But thank you so much, both of you, for your time today. And it's been a wonderful discussion, and we look forward to seeing great things ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.